Welcome to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Established in 2016, the Fintech Times is a global multimedia news outlet centered around the world's first leading fintech newspaper. We report on the latest and brightest ideas from the fintech world. Follow the conversation using hashtag TFD News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.
Hello, and welcome back to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast brought to you by Vanta. Vanta helps you save time, money, and build customer trust, all by centralizing program requirements and evidence collections and frameworks like Dora. If you want to manage risk and improve security, then head over to vanta.com/fintechtimes to learn more. But hello, Tom, how are you doing today? We are sadly down a person. Francis is not with us, but it feels like this is the first time I've been on the podcast in a few years, practically. So how are you doing? I've missed all the fintech goodness. So how's it going?
It's going very good. It's good to have you back. Like you said, it's been a little while, but it's good. We've got this ongoing curse where we can't get the trio together. It's like once in a blue moon we can get all three of us together in the same week, but it's good to have you back. And yeah, it's been a good week for fintech news. There's been quite a lot of stuff going on, especially at the end of the week. I think normally we see a very busy Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday will peter out. But we've had quite a lot of news the back end of this week, which makes a change. And yeah, it's been a busy week, and I think we've got some good topics to talk about as well.
Yeah, awesome. I do feel like March was always a busy time for fintech. I don't know whether it's because it's like getting close to the end of the financial year or like the spring kind of happening. I don't know, but March always feels like a crazy time for fintech. So it's been very exciting.
Everyone's always sleeping in January and February, and March
Yeah.
is just, I think, when they wake up and they go, right, we got to nail this down now, get started for the year.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. So, I mean, what are you going to be talking about today?
So, as I said, there was actually quite a few stories to pick from this week. There's been a lot of like interesting studies and reports coming out, but the one I ended up landing on was all about banking apps in the UK and whether there are ways they need to improve.
Awesome stuff. And I am going to be talking about tap to phone adoption in the UK. But since I'm a little bit rusty and haven't done one of these for a while, I am going to let you go first to remind me just how it's done. So why don't you take it away?
Thank you very much. I will do. So yeah, I mean, as we know, banking and financial apps have become basically a central part of personal finance management in the UK. Like for me personally, I've become basically completely reliant on my banking apps to manage my finances and keep track of my spending and savings. I think if I didn't have them, I would have no clue what's in my bank account, how much I'm saving. I'd probably be overdrawn every month. So for me, yeah, I'm completely reliant on them. But this new report from mobile app service provider Apadme, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, has revealed that almost 1 in 4 Brits believe that these banking apps are in need of improvement in some way, and also points out to a persistent lack of customer trust in them. And obviously, it's a great time for a report to come out of this, because I think it was only last week we saw a number of banking outages, which was Lloyds Bank, Halifax, TSB, and Bank of Scotland saw their customers struggling to access their banking apps for a couple of different reasons on what was the 28th of February. And that was like payday for obviously a lot of people in the UK. And that just wreaks havoc with a lot of people's sort of financial outgoings and accessing their account. And in response to this, Apadme basically is urging banks to implement more robust testing protocols, invest in updating and maintaining IT systems, plan for greater scalability, and deploy advanced monitoring tools to address potential issues before they escalate, to try and help mitigate the risk of future outages. Now, it basically, in the report, the findings were from a survey of 1,000 UK adults and found that 23% of finance app users only somewhat trust these apps and indicate a need for better trust building measures, while 28% cite security concerns as the primary reason for not using them, while 40% of non-users still prefer visiting physical branches or post offices, which highlight a preference for traditional banking methods. But basically, just off the back of these findings, I was interested to find out, what your take was, see if you agree with the idea of these banking apps not necessarily being secure enough, and, see, is there like another feature or necessity that you would sort of rank higher that you think your banking apps need, or, do you think it's the security that we need to rock with and really improve?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting piece of research. I think what you're saying about people not trusting banking apps, I found actually to be very true. So like, I'm like you, my life is on these apps, right? I have so many on my phone for like loads of different things, whether it's like, different bank accounts or cards or like my mortgage, stuff like that. So I've got probably about like 15 different banking apps on my phone for a variety of different things, to the point where everyone makes fun of me because it's like, oh, here comes the fintech journalist with all the banking apps. But like I could not manage without them. You know what I mean? Like I'm always checking them to make sure payments have gone in, or seeing how much, money is available, blah, blah, blah. So the sort of people not using banking apps and having to rely on going into branch, or even like getting statements through once a month, if banks even send like physical statements anymore, I don't know. All mine are in the banking app, so I don't get a physical one anymore, is crazy to me. But I have quite a few friends, all of whom, late 20s, early 30s, that do not trust banking apps. They will not have them on their phone. They do not use them. They won't even, like, a few of them won't even use like contactless. And which I know is a separate thing, but they just will not have them on their phone. So it's crazy to me that in such a digital world that we have now, that some people just don't trust banking apps, especially considering, obviously the COVID pandemic, where you kind of had to use a banking app because they shut everything. It's just absolutely insane to me. So it's really interesting to see that this sort of, what I thought was just a couple of my crazy friends, is backed up by research here, that there's a trust issue sort of across the board when it comes to customers. And I think it's really interesting because I think there's a lot of variety between banking apps, and I think that's kind of where my brain goes in terms of how can we sort of make banking apps better, because there are some features that you get on certain apps that you don't get on other apps. And I think particularly there's a lot of sort of challenger banks that have some really great features on their apps that are not replicated in sort of more traditional banks apps that I would love to see. The feature that I really love is on a few of them, you can see your card details in the banking app. So like you can press a button and it'll show you your card number, your expiry date and things like that. And that's brilliant because I never have my wallet on me. So that's always really great. And I wish every single card I had that in the banking app, because it's just so convenient when you need to like buy something with your card details. But yeah, it's really interesting. I think security and sort of other improvements, I can see why that's an issue. And I can see why maybe people are looking at that. And I know everyone's very security conscious at the moment. I think there's never been a sort of a worse time for fraud when it comes to things like banking and finance and things like that. You're constantly kind of dodging all the while to stop being a victim of fraud. And it's actually really difficult to kind of make sure that you know what you're doing and you know what's happening. And I guess it's just one of those really interesting things that, yes, security is important, but how much more security can you add? And obviously there's more to be done. There's always more to be done. There's always more improvement to be made. And I guess the security goes hand in hand with the trust. So if you prove that your app is more secure, then you're going to get more people trusting you, more people happy with your security measures and things like that. But I guess it's all about the design and how you make that suitable for your customers. And I guess it's coming back to this kind of customer loyalty, customer demand thing again, where banks need to be actively listening to their customers to find out what it is that they want and then acting off that. And I think that's the only way that you can do it in a way that is going to make everyone happy and make everyone who uses your apps, or even the people that don't use your apps that you want to be using your apps, to kind of get on the same page and use it all together. But yeah, it's a really interesting piece of research for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I wonder if there's like just a blanket level of like, there's always going to be a level of like not trusting your bank. Because I think when I was growing up, before banking apps were a thing, my mum used to have a book where every time she had a transaction, she'd write down the amount. And then when her bank statement came at the end of the month, she'd check to see it matched up with what she had for that month, and to make sure the exact same amounts that she had noted down were in her bank statement, to make sure like the banks weren't like siphoning off a bit of money without her noticing or anything like that. And not to say that that's a widespread fear, or that's necessarily a fear that we should be validating. But I think it goes to show that there is a level of like distrust in banks. A lot of the time we're talking about, digital banks don't have the trust because they haven't been around for so long. They haven't been able to build that level of trust. But there's still always been a level of distrust of even like the biggest incumbent banks. And I think like for me and you, we're like, oh, well, you use our banking app every day. We check it, see our transactions, send people money every day. Like you, I literally last night was looking through my banking app to try and find my card details because I couldn't find my wallet. and then they didn't actually have it. So for me, that's another feature that I could do with. But security isn't something that goes through my mind much when I'm using these apps. Like, I'm more thinking about, okay, like, am I sending this to the right, like when I'm making payments, am I sending it to the right person? But I'm less conscious about, oh, what if these get hacked or there's an outage and I'm not able to access it? And that's just something I'll deal with when it happens. And obviously I'm with Barclays, and that did happen to Barclays a couple of months ago, and which was a bit of a pain. But aside from that, I'm not thinking, oh, is this going to happen all the time? I'm not, unless it did start happening more frequently, I wouldn't be worried about it. But I can see why people would be. But yeah, like I say, I just wonder if there's just a level of distrust that they'll never fully be able to get rid of, just because when your money's concerned, you're always going to be a bit more, okay, I need to be really careful with this, make sure that everything's okay with it. No one's, getting into my accounts, no one's siphoning money away, or whatever the case may be. I'm not getting hacked. So I feel like even if the security measures are top tier, which they're not always, I wonder if there's still going to be that level of distrust, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the future.
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right, and I think maybe we're just too trusting. Maybe like we just have a base level of trust
maybe
that
we need to be
shouldn't.
asking more
I don't know.
questions.
Yeah, I've never thought, oh, is my bank app secure? I don't know. Maybe I should think that. Maybe that's on me, but who knows? Who could say? But anyway, let's move on to my article, which is kind of similar, but also not at all. Where we're talking about tap to phone. So this is very exciting. So this is new research from Visa, that have found tap to phone adoption has seen a 200% increase across the globe, with a 320% increase in the UK specifically. So this, I'm getting a little bit nitty about this, and I realize this is well said, but this is the kind of thing that I get excited about. So tap to phone, this is basically when you turn your phone into a POS system. So you could turn your smartphone into a point of sale device and take payments directly from your smartphone as if it was a POS terminal. I'm sure we've all seen that. If you've ever been to like a craft market or similar kind of thing like that, that's where you kind of see them most of all. But like, they're so useful in a lot of different ways for a lot of different businesses and a lot of different use cases. So this is really exciting because the UK has really exceeded the global average with that 320% growth rate, with more than 1 in 5 tap sellers being small businesses in the UK. So I think this is just a perfect example of how you can see new technology, specifically when we kind of think about fintech as well, helping to really democratize access to commerce tools and really help boost small businesses and whatever that they're doing at that time. And I think it's a really interesting leveler for a lot of businesses because it kind of removes that need to get a POS device, right, which can be quite expensive. I think there's some great options now with like SumUp and there's another one that is really popular that I can't remember, but you can buy a POS device for, like a small business market. I'm talking about market specifically because that's where I've seen them, but any kind of small business situation where you need to take payments. But you can buy POS devices for like a really good price now. They can be really quite cheap, but having this tap to phone solution kind of negates that need, and you can just use the mobile device that you already have. So yeah, more than 1 in 5 tap sellers are small businesses in the UK. So this is just a really exciting thing, I think. And I think it's really empowering, especially when we think about micro businesses and small businesses, especially in the economy that we have, to see this upward trend for tap to phone. It's really exciting. I think it's really great to see the benefits of tap technology, especially when it comes to small businesses and the things that they do. And it's just all very, very cool. And I think it's really nice to see Visa taking attention to this and lots of different providers really getting in on the tap to phone demand, I guess, for want of a better word. So, Tom, I'd love to know what you think on this. I mean, I'd love to get your thoughts, whether you've seen a tap to phone kind of payment in the wild, or I mean, are you excited about tap to phone as I am? Let me know.
No, I liked the way you started. That you feel a bit sad that that's what you're excited about, but I actually completely agree. Every time I see it about, I'm like, yeah, I like this. This is a nice little solution that obviously, as you said, is so helpful and a bit of a leveler for small businesses. It's good to see, and obviously the traditional POS systems could be really expensive. Just to get one of those card readers is just a very, very expensive thing for them to have to buy in the first place, to maintain, And this really, allows them to, most people have a smartphone these days. They can use that. That's an existing bit of tech. They don't have to fork out to buy. And then they can use that, to receive payments. And obviously, contactless payments are so hugely popular now that if you don't have them, it's almost a bit of a huge setback in many cases. So that makes it an easy way for businesses that maybe even aren't necessarily new, but they just were only accepting cash or certain card transfers. Now they can easily use their smartphone and leverage those to open themselves up to a whole new range of payment options, and that obviously is just hugely beneficial. And I really like in the article it talks about a very niche example from a cafe owner in Sevenoaks, and he's talking about how they can pet alpacas across their 11-acre grounds, and they can still take payments instantly across their sort of area. And I think that just goes to show that regardless of the niche, it can be so helpful. And wherever you are in the UK, as long as they've got a connection, you've got a 5G connection, you've got an internet connection, whatever the case may be, or 4G, whatever, you can still accept payments. And I think that's just just so hugely beneficial to small businesses in general. So yeah, I think it's really great, and it's good to see that there has been such a huge uptake, especially in the UK, because like you said, I just think it's something that really does boost income and therefore the success of small businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's just something that is just a real benefit to small businesses. I think especially at the moment when we're thinking about, there's so many barriers to both starting your own business and kind of like keeping your business afloat right now with the economy the way it is and the global situation. It's all kind of a bit negative in a lot of ways. So having really simple solutions like this kind of shows you where fintech could really shine, and actually fintech could really make a difference. And it's that kind of thing that, like I said, I get really excited about. And I also love that you brought out the alpaca cafe from the article, because I read that and I'm like, well, I simply must go to this alpaca cafe place. So maybe we'll have to do a Fintech Times trip just for some research. But anyway, that brings us to the end of our discussion today. So thank you so much, Tom, for bringing your article and chatting with me. If you want to hear any more about what we've talked about today, head on over to thefintechtimes.com, where you can read plenty more news and insights over there. But very quickly, let's go on to what I learned this week. So each week we are learning something new at the Fintech Times, having so much new information news crossing our desks that it's all be fun to share that with our listeners. So Tom, what have you learned this week?
Well, like I said, there's been so many new surveys and reports, but with International Women's Day coming up, I thought the one that really caught my eye was from MasterCard, which really revealed that 84% of women in the UAE are considering starting their own business, just highlighting a huge sort of explosion of female-led entrepreneurship in the Middle East region.
Awesome. That is fantastic. We love to see it. And mine is slightly less nice, which is a new analysis from Kaspersky, I think I'm saying that right, which found that 2.3 million bank cards were leaked on the dark web in 2023, which is a horrifying number, but there we go. But anyway, Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. It is so good to be back on the podcast, and hopefully we'll get Francis back and be all three of us together again talking about fintech. But until then, I will catch you on the next one.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Fintech Times News and Views podcast. Don't miss next week's episode and continue the conversation using #TFT News and Views and follow us at the Fintech Times.